Baldur's Gate 3 is all people are talking about right now, at least until the deluge of fall games hit. I mean, you know, Starfield and all that. But some folks are already calling it the game of the year, including giving it its highest scores, including PC Gamer giving it the best score that they've ever given for any game. And it has already beaten Tears of the Kingdom's Metacritic score for games released in 2023, sitting at 97%. Yeah, in all intents and purposes, this game looks like a masterpiece, right? But is this masterpiece accessible? Let's find out. Hi, I'm Steve Saylor, I'm blind, and I play video games. To find out how, click here or click the link in the description down below. While you're down there, click the like and subscribe buttons so I can do cool stuff with this channel. Now, I'm gonna get this out of the way first and foremost. I do love this game. I love the scope, the scale, and the near perfect implementation of what it's like to play Dungeons and Dragons, but in a video game form. The amount of content in this game is massive and truly does live up to the acronym as a full-fledged RPG. So I will say this and get us up out of the way. Baldur's Gate 3 contains many unnecessary barriers for disabled people. It has the basics with some cool things, but nothing we'll talk about as the definitive accessible experience in 2023. It's not to say that at some point it can be accessible. All throughout early access, Larian Studios was updating the game with accessibility based on player feedback. So there is hope it can be improved, but for right now, for the official PC release, it's not what we disabled players had hoped for. All right, well, let's start off with what the game doesn't have and then discuss what it does. The game doesn't have any screen reader support, no navigational assist, no remapping of controls when using a controller, but it is remappable on mouse and keyboard for those with motor disabilities. And it has tiny text in most of the UI, even more so if you're playing it on mouse and keyboard. No visualizations of sound when you're attacked from off screen. Also, there are full captions for NPC dialogue that appear above characters' heads, but there are moments when your companions talk to each other while walking behind you, and there is no indicator that they are talking unless you turn around and see the captions above their heads.
Red meat. Now, that's a different matter. Rare as can be. Dripping.
Well, unless we find a cure, you won't have any teeth to chew it with soon enough.
Also, that dialogue isn't even captioned in the in-game chat log. So there could be some character backstory reveals, but you wouldn't know it as a deaf or hard of hearing player because that info is missed on screen. There is no colorblind support, which is super needed when using the highlights feature, where characters can have a high contrast like outline to separate the characters from the environment. This is a great feature and helped me actually a ton, but you can't change the colors from red for enemies, yellow for NPCs, or blue for your party members, and green for allied NPCs. I mentioned this for colorblind support because the highlight color changes depending on if any NPC attacks you. Their highlights turn from yellow to red. Also, there are some onboarding tutorials to familiarize yourself with the controls, and if you understand D&D, most of everything else is easier to pick up. But if you don't know D&D at all, or even if you know it a little bit, it's not as simple to know the difference between a short and a long rest, or why you can't use some spells and not others, or the economy of actions per turn. It's not really well explained. You just have to kind of figure it out as you go. You're basically given help for mechanics, but not really for strategy. Now, if you're a veteran D&D player or even a veteran Baldur's Gate player, it can be argued that comes with time, but it's hard for players not used to making mistakes with the characters and rolling with what the dice give you when you aren't given some help in terms of strategy. I'll just say this, the game is approachable in some areas, but not all, and you may get yourself 10 to 15 hours in and find you made so many mistakes along the way that you'd want to start over, which can be overwhelming to folks, including those with cognitive disabilities. Now, what the game does offer, though, in terms of accessibility, which is not a lot, but there are some to highlight. There are some of the best implementations of adaptable UI I have seen yet. It's not perfect, but it is the first time I've seen this adaptation before. I'll use the example of subtitles to start. In the game, you can have subtitles set to a huge size with an adjustable opacity for the background. This is something that Larian Studios actually added in during the early access period. However, selecting the text size to its largest isn't set to one size. Depending on the type of screen you're using, the text size can be as large as 61 pixels to up to 96 pixels in size. size. That's very rare in a lot of games, especially in RPGs. So no matter what screen resolution you use, the largest text size is consistent across the board. But the primary example is that the game changes its entire UI layout depending on if you're playing with a mouse and keyboard or with a controller. On mouse and keyboard, you have the common bottom bar HUD with your abilities and spells at a glance, much like you would see in any other game like a Diablo or any other RPG. But if you're using a controller, you use a radial wheel to select those same abilities and spells. Some have said they prefer mouse and keyboard over the controller in this specific case, but I actually disagree. I love the controller layout because once you get used to it and figure out which spells and abilities you like using the most, you can customize those radial wheels to be more super efficient with your character's moves. But another thing I noticed with the UI changing between the different control schemes is that the UI on the controller side is larger than the UI for mouse and keyboard. Obviously, I think the devs at Larian Studios made this UI for its console releases, for the PS5 release and eventually the Xbox release, but also it has the incidental benefit for players to play Baldur's Gate 3 on their Steam Decks or even a handheld gaming device. After playing this on my own Steam Deck, I can honestly say that while the UI the size isn't exactly what I want it to be, I mean there are some areas where the text size is ridiculously small even in the larger UI, it's still way better than the mouse and keyboard default layout and may even be my preferred way to play the game from here on out. As a matter of fact, the majority of my playtime was with the controller on this high-end AMD PC behind me. Subtle plug, thanks AMD for, helping me build my gaming PC. Hashtag AMD Red Team. As a side note, this also feels like the first time we see developers tackle what I and other advocates have been saying about the future of adaptable UI. This is huge. Players will be able to benefit as studios adopt this design idea, especially for the growing handheld gaming market with consoles like the Steam Deck to even cloud gaming on your phones, both from a portability standpoint and an accessibility standpoint. If you can adjust the UI size no matter what screen you're on, that means that those with low vision or who are legally blind can benefit in their home setups. If I could increase the size of everything in my setup with my 50-inch TV sitting here in front of me, my eyes won't be strained anymore and I can play longer, which you kind of have to in this game. Now, while this game can be a cognitive nightmare with just how massive this game can be, there are some options to help those players. Not a lot, but some that I also wanted to highlight. The ability to adjust the difficulty on the fly as you need is great. This helps especially if you are new to D&D and you can set the difficulty to a lower, easier setting. But with D&D, obviously, there are also dice rolls. And the game has you do dice rolls for important moments. That can be intimidating, so what Baldur's Gate 3 has done is they have an option called Karmic Dice, which when enabled will make sure that if you fail a dice roll once, it is more likely to succeed for you at some point. Sometimes it's on the next roll if you have inspiration, but the Karmic Dice promises you won't have a stroke of bad luck with failing dice rolls throughout the game. But also, failure isn't necessarily a bad thing. Often it can lead to very entertaining outcomes instead of panic stressive of if a player did the wrong thing because they failed a check. That can also be a huge cognitive load off disabled players' minds. Well, I mean, also save scumming is technically also a valid option that helps lower that cognitive stress too. I know that there's a whole debate between safe scumming. This might actually be a whole other video in and of itself, but the TLDR of it is I actually do think safe scumming is in and itself an accessibility thing. It's good. It's okay. It's okay to save scum in this game because, you want to see something how things kind of work out. Anyway, now with how massive this game is, there is a lot I could nitpick about regarding what the game doesn't have or does have for disabled players. But even with all that, I still do enjoy this game. If you're a D&D fan, this is the perfect game for you. If you're a disabled D&D fan though, this might be a wait and see to see if Larian does add more accessibility functionality in future updates. But as of right now, in my review so far for accessibility, I'm giving Baldur's Gate 3 a 2.5 out of 5. Thank you so much for watching. I know that there was a lot to cover in Baldur's Gate 3, and there was a lot that I could have basically added in or talked about. Normally when I do these reviews, I usually try to do talk about the major pain points or the major good points of a game. So I know that there's probably a lot that is missing that even if you have played it yourself, that this game may have that works great for you or doesn't work for you. But this is just kind of based on my sort of overall experience, and also from talking to some friends who have also played this as well. So I want to thank my friends for helping me out with this review. If you do have any questions though about Baldur's Gate 3 that I didn't get a chance to answer, please feel free to ask them in the comments below. And also while you're down there, click the like and subscribe buttons. I would really appreciate it. This fall will be huge for games, and I don't want you to miss on any accessibility reviews coming up. Thanks again, and as always, I remain obediently yours. Bye-bye.